Admiral Kethavar stood on the bridge of his flagship staring at the empty space where Earth should have been buzzing with activity. 3 months had passed since the humans vanished, and the silence still made his scales crawl with unease. The massive blue planet hung in space like a ghost world with its cities dark and its orbital stations abandoned. The communications officer turned toward him with worry in her large eyes. "Sir, we have received reports from 17 more sectors. All human colonies are empty. No signs of struggle or damage. They just left everything behind." Kethavar walked to the viewing port and watched automated cargo ships drift past without pilots. The humans had built an empire that stretched across 40 systems and employed millions of alien workers. Now those workers sat unemployed on their homeworlds, while the human-designed factories continued running on autopilot. "Any word from the Trade Federation?" he asked. "Director Vextar says their markets crashed again today. Without human innovations, the tech sector has lost 60% of its value. The mining guilds are reporting equipment failures because they cannot get replacement parts for human-made machines." The Admiral rubbed his forehead, feeling a headache building. The humans had seemed like just another species when they first joined the galactic community 50 years ago. They were not the strongest or the smartest, but they had something that made them valuable. They could solve problems that other species could not even understand. On the planet below, automated systems kept the lights on and the air clean. Human cities stood empty but perfectly maintained by robots that followed their final programming. It was as if the humans had prepared for their departure down to the smallest detail. Dr. Yaxini's report arrived on his personal display. The Mantari scientist had been studying the abandoned research facility on Kepler Prime for 2 weeks. Her findings were disturbing. The humans had been working on projects that no other species understood. Quantum resonance chambers that could manipulate space-time itself. Energy collectors that drew power from dimensions beyond normal space. "Admiral," his tactical officer called out, "we are receiving a priority message from Ambassador Veltar. The Council of Species is calling an emergency session." Kethavar was not surprised. The galaxy was falling apart without the humans. They had been the ones who mediated disputes between hostile species. They designed the communication networks that kept thousands of worlds connected. They built the defensive systems that protected trade routes from pirates and raiders. The worst part was how quietly they had left. No dramatic speeches or threats of war. No demands for better treatment or more territory. They had simply packed up everything important and disappeared overnight, leaving behind only empty buildings and confused aliens. Captain Zorith of the Hegemony Defense Force had sent reports about his military academies. The instructors were struggling to teach tactics without human strategic thinking. For decades, alien officers had learned warfare from human textbooks and training programs. Now they realized how dependent they had become on human military genius. The communications officer spoke again. "Sir, we have Captain Thrix on long-range transmission. He wants to speak with you about the situation in the Outer Rim." "Put him through." The holographic image of the gruff Corvan captain appeared before him. Thrix's armored form was scarred from countless battles, but today he looked worried rather than fierce. "Admiral, the border worlds are getting nervous. Without human patrol ships keeping the peace, some of the more aggressive species are starting to make moves." "What kind of moves?" "The Sectar Consortium has been testing our response times. They probe our defenses, then retreat when we show up. It is like they are waiting for something." "The humans used to handle this kind of thing before it became a real problem." Kethavar nodded, understanding the captain's concern. The humans had never been the most powerful military force in the galaxy, but they had been the most reliable. When threats emerged, they appeared quickly and solved problems with minimal violence. Other species fought wars, but humans prevented them. "Keep your forces on high alert. I will speak with the Council about increasing patrols in your sector." After the transmission ended, Kethavar returned to studying the reports. Every day brought new evidence of how much the galaxy had depended on humanity. Medical facilities that could not operate without human-designed equipment. Transportation networks that relied on human programming. Even the food distribution systems that fed billions of aliens had been optimized by human engineers. Dr. Yaxini's latest report was the most troubling. She had discovered that the quantum chambers on Kepler Prime showed signs of massive energy discharge just before the humans disappeared. The power readings were off the charts, suggesting they had activated some kind of dimensional technology that no other species possessed. The research notes she found were incomplete, but they hinted at experiments with parallel dimensions and quantum manipulation. The humans had been working on projects that could explain their sudden departure, but the data was too fragmented to understand. It was as if they had deliberately destroyed the most important information before leaving, sir. The HFY communications officer interrupted his thoughts. We are receiving distress signals from the mining colony on Tertius 7. They report equipment failures and request immediate assistance. Dispatch a repair team. Make sure they have experts in human technology. As the hours passed, more reports arrived. Power grids failing without human maintenance. Communication satellites going offline without human updates. Even the artificial intelligence systems that managed planetary resources were starting to show errors without human supervision. The humans had built themselves into the foundation of galactic civilization so completely that their absence created cracks everywhere. What made it worse was the growing realization that they had planned this. The evidence suggested they had spent months preparing for their departure, making sure their automated systems would keep running for a while after they left. But why had they gone, and where had they gone? The quantum energy signatures suggested they had not simply traveled to another part of the galaxy. They had done something far more dramatic and permanent, something that involved technology beyond the understanding of any other species. HFY looked out at the empty space around Earth and wondered if the humans were watching from somewhere beyond normal perception. Had they transcended physical existence, or had they simply found a better place to live? The silence gave no answers, only more questions that grew heavier with each passing day. The galaxy was learning what it meant to be truly alone for the first time in 50 years, and the lesson was harder than anyone had expected. 6 months had passed since the humans vanished and the galaxy was coming apart at the seams. Commander Thrick stood in the command center of Tertius 7 watching enemy ships approach his position. The Corvan Empire had launched their biggest expansion in 2 centuries, believing the galaxy was weak without human peacekeepers. Sir, their assault craft are entering atmosphere, his tactical officer reported. Estimated landing in 40 minutes. Thrick studied the tactical display with growing concern. The Corvan fleet was massive and their battle plan was aggressive. But something felt wrong about their approach. Their formations were too predictable, and their attack patterns followed textbook strategies that any decent commander could counter. Prepare all defensive positions. Contact the orbital platforms and tell them to focus fire on the command ships. The battle began exactly as Thrick expected. The Corvan forces came in waves using the same tactics they had employed for decades. Their adaptive combat systems should have been learning from each failed assault and adjusting their approach. Instead, they kept repeating the same mistakes. Over and over, Commander, his weapons officer called out. Their battle computers seem to be malfunctioning. They are not adapting to our defensive changes. Thrick realized what was happening. The Corvan military had become dependent on human-designed combat algorithms that updated their tactics in real time. Without those updates, their sophisticated war machines were fighting like simple automatons, following old programming. The defense of Tertius 7 should have been hopeless. The mining colony had minimal military installations and a small garrison, but the attacking force was crippled by their own technological dependence on human innovation. Their weapons were powerful, but their tactics were predictable. After 6 hours of fighting, the Corvan assault began to falter. Their commanders were sending increasingly desperate messages demanding to know why their systems were not working properly. The answer was simple but devastating. The humans who had designed their military software were gone. Sir, we are receiving a priority transmission from Admiral HFY, the communications officer announced. The holographic image of the Zephyrian Admiral appeared in the command center. Commander, I am sending reinforcements, but they will not arrive for another 8 hours. Can you hold your position? We should be able to, sir. The enemy forces are having technical difficulties that are working in our favor. Good. We have reports of similar problems affecting Corvan operations in other sectors. It seems their military technology is not as independent as they believed. After the transmission ended, Thrick continued coordinating the defense. The situation was improving, but ammunition was running low, and his defensive systems needed repairs. Then his scouts reported something unexpected. There was an abandoned human supply depot in the mountains that had not been mentioned in any official records. "Sir, we found the depot, but it is sealed with locks we cannot break. The security system is asking for authorization codes that only humans would know." Thrix thought for a moment, then made a decision that felt both desperate and logical. "Tell the system that humans are gone, and we need help defending against invaders, too." Everyone's surprised, the locks disengaged immediately. Inside the depot, they found weapons and equipment that seemed designed specifically for their current situation. Combat suits that adjusted automatically to alien physiology. Energy weapons that recharged themselves using ambient heat. Tactical. Computers that analyzed enemy movements and suggested counter-strategies. "Commander, this equipment is incredible," his supply officer reported. "The weapons seem to anticipate what we need before we ask for it. The tactical systems are providing battle plans that are perfectly suited to our defensive positions." Using the human equipment, Thrix's forces turned the tide of battle completely. The Corvin assault was not just stopped but routed so thoroughly that their commanders retreated in confusion. But the victory came with disturbing questions. How had the humans known this exact attack would happen? Why had they hidden military supplies in secret locations across the galaxy? Meanwhile, on the diplomatic front, Ambassador Zoreth was struggling to hold the Council of Species together. Trade routes were collapsing without human mediation. Communication networks were failing without human technical support. Border disputes that had been dormant for decades were suddenly erupting into violence. "The hegemony is demanding compensation for lost trade revenue," she announced to the emergency session. "The Federation wants military assistance to protect their shipping lanes. The Outer Rim colonies are requesting emergency food supplies because their distribution systems are breaking down." The council chamber was filled with angry voices and competing demands. For 50 years, the humans had quietly managed thousands of problems that other species did not even notice. Now those problems were surfacing all at once like hidden infections, finally showing symptoms. Dr. Yexini's research was providing some answers, but they were more frightening than helpful. The quantum technology the humans had been developing was far beyond anything other species understood. The energy readings from their departure suggested they had not simply traveled to another location. They had shifted into a different kind of existence entirely. "The quantum resonance chamber shows signs of dimensional manipulation," she reported to the scientific committee. "The humans may have found a way to exist outside normal space-time. If this is true, then they are not coming back in any conventional sense." Captain Lisa Brown's personal log had been discovered on an abandoned research vessel orbiting a distant star. The entries revealed a growing awareness among humans that other species viewed them as either tools to be used or threats to be contained. The final entries were encrypted, but the earlier ones painted a picture of a species preparing for something momentous. Day 847. "The council meeting today confirmed our worst fears. They see us as convenient problem solvers, but not as equals. When we propose new technologies, they worry about us becoming too powerful. When we step back from conflicts, they demand we intervene. We cannot win." Day 923. "The quantum experiments are showing promising results. If we can shift our existence to parallel dimensions, we might be able to protect the galaxy without being trapped by their expectations. The price will be enormous, but it may be the only way." The log entries stopped abruptly after that, but they provided crucial insight into human thinking during their final months. They had not left out of anger or frustration. They had been planning something that required enormous sacrifice for a purpose that other species could not understand. As reports continued flooding in from across the galaxy, the true scope of human influence became clear. They had been involved in every aspect of galactic civilization, from the smallest technical details to the largest strategic decisions. Their absence was not just inconvenient, it was catastrophic. The worst part was realizing how much the other species had taken human contributions for granted. They had assumed humans would always be available to solve problems and prevent conflicts. No one had considered what would happen if humanity simply chose to leave. Now the galaxy was learning. That lesson in the hardest possible way as systems failed and conflicts erupted without human guidance to prevent them. 1 year after the humans disappeared, Dr. Zenithy finally made the breakthrough that explained everything. The Altarian physicist had been studying quantum resonance patterns in abandoned human laboratories for months. What she discovered changed everything the galaxy thought it knew about humanity's departure. They did not leave, she announced to the Emergency Science Council. They shifted into quantum superposition. They exist in parallel dimensions that occupy the same space as our reality but operate on different frequencies. The council chamber fell silent as the implications became clear. The humans had not abandoned the galaxy. They had evolved beyond physical existence while remaining present in ways that other species could not perceive. The massive energy signatures detected during their departure were from dimensional generators that allowed them to exist in multiple realities. Simultaneously, Admiral Kethavar received the report while dealing with another crisis in the Outer Rim. Pirate fleets were attacking trade convoys with increasing boldness, believing that human patrol ships would not appear to stop them. The Admiral was preparing to dispatch his forces when something unexpected happened. "Sir, we are detecting energy signatures consistent with human technology," his sensor officer reported, "but there are no ships on our displays." Suddenly, the pirate fleet began experiencing system failures. Their weapons stopped working, and their engines shut down one by one. Within minutes, the entire attack force was drifting helplessly in space, completely disabled but undamaged. It was as if invisible guardians had reached out from another dimension to protect the convoy explorer. Captain Jake Collins' final transmission was discovered in the archives of a deep space monitoring station. The message had been encrypted using quantum algorithms that took a full year to decode. What it revealed was both terrifying and inspiring. Day 127. "We have confirmed the existence of hostile entities in dark space. They exist in quantum dimensions beyond normal perception, and they have been infiltrating our reality for centuries. Conventional weapons cannot touch them. Physical defenses are useless against beings that exist partially outside space-time." Day 1145. "The infiltration is more advanced than we feared. These entities can possess other species by manipulating their quantum signatures. They have been using possessed individuals to influence galactic politics and create conflicts that weaken civilized worlds. The other species cannot detect them because they lack quantum awareness." Day 1203. "We have developed technology that allows us to fight these entities on their own dimensional level, but the cost is enormous. To battle beings of pure quantum energy, we must become quantum beings ourselves. We will lose our physical forms but gain the ability to exist across multiple dimensions." The transmission explained why humanity had been so secretive during their final months. They had discovered an invasion that threatened all life in normal space, but they could not fight it without sacrificing their own physical existence. The quantum generators found in human facilities were not transportation devices, but transformation chambers that allowed them to become multidimensional beings. Dr. Rachel Kim's research notes provided the final pieces of the puzzle. The brilliant quantum physicist had been working on consciousness transfer technology that could upload human minds into quantum matrices. Her notes revealed that the entire human species had undergone this process voluntarily to become guardians capable of fighting interdimensional threats. The entities from dark space feed on conflict and chaos, her notes explained. They have been manipulating galactic politics for generations, creating wars and hatred that generate the negative energy they need to survive. Physical species cannot fight them because they exist beyond matter and energy. Only quantum consciousness can engage them in battle. As the truth became clear, other mysteries started making sense. The automated systems humans had left behind were not just maintaining their abandoned cities. They were part of a vast defensive network designed to protect the galaxy from quantum infiltration. The hidden supply depots contained weapons specifically designed to fight interdimensional threats. Commander Thrix realized that his victory against the Corvan Empire had been possible because humans were fighting the dark space entities that had been influencing Corvan military leaders. The sudden failure of their adaptive combat systems had occurred when the possessed commanders lost contact with their interdimensional masters. "The humans have been protecting us this entire time," he reported to Admiral Kethvar. "Their quantum consciousness allows them to see threats that we cannot detect. Every system failure that seemed like abandonment was actually them fighting battles we did not know were happening." The revelation changed everything about how the galaxy viewed humanity's departure. They had not left out of frustration or anger. They had made the ultimate sacrifice by giving up their physical existence to become eternal guardians, protecting all life from threats beyond normal perception. Dr. Yexini's analysis of the quantum chambers revealed the incredible scope of the transformation. Every human on every world had undergone the process simultaneously. Parents had uploaded their children. Scientists had sacrificed their bodies for quantum consciousness. Entire families had chosen transcendence together rather than leave anyone behind. The energy required for this transformation should have destroyed multiple star systems, she reported. But the humans found a way to distribute the process across dimensional barriers. They used their quantum technology to minimize the impact on normal space while maximizing their ability to exist in parallel dimensions. The automated messages that began appearing across human territories confirmed the truth. They were not recordings but real-time communications from quantum consciousness that existed beyond physical death. The humans were still present, but they had become something far greater and more terrible than any physical species. Captain Lisa Brown's consciousness appeared on monitoring stations throughout the galaxy, delivering the same message to confused alien observers. "We did not abandon you. We became something that could protect you. The threats you cannot see are real and they are coming. Our physical bodies were the price we paid to become your shields against the darkness." The galaxy was forced to confront an uncomfortable truth. Humanity had always been different, not because they were stronger or smarter, but because they were more willing to sacrifice everything for others. They had given up their very existence to fight enemies that other species could not even perceive. As reports continued coming in from across known space, it became clear that humans were still actively involved in galactic affairs. Trade routes were being protected by invisible guardians. Conflicts were being prevented by subtle interventions. Technology was being improved by quantum consciousness that existed beyond normal detection. The humans had not left the galaxy. They had become its unseen protectors, existing in dimensions beyond physical perception, but remaining eternally vigilant against threats that would destroy all life if left unchecked. The silence that had once seemed like abandonment now felt like the quiet presence of guardians watching from beyond the veil of normal reality. 18 months after humanity's transformation, the dark space invasion began in earnest. Admiral Kethvar watched in horror as massive shadow ships materialized throughout the core worlds. These vessels defied every law of physics, moving through solid matter like ghosts and appearing wherever they chose without regard for distance or time. "Sir, the enemy fleet just passed through our battle line without slowing down," his tactical officer reported with disbelief in his voice. "Our weapons are having no effect. The energy beams pass right through their ships as if they were not there." The shadow vessels were unlike anything the galaxy had ever faced. Their crews appeared to be normal aliens from various species, but their behavior was wrong. They moved with perfect coordination as if controlled by a single mind. Their eyes glowed with unnatural light and they spoke in voices that seemed to come from multiple dimensions. "All ships concentrate fire on the lead vessel," Kethvar ordered, knowing it was hopeless, but refusing to surrender without a fight. The Galactic fleet unleashed everything they had. Plasma cannons fired at maximum power. Missile barrages filled space with explosions. Energy weapons that could crack planets focused their beams on the shadow ships. Nothing worked. The attacks passed through the enemy vessels like they were shooting at empty space. Then the possession began. Crew members throughout the fleet started behaving strangely. Their personalities changed instantly as their quantum signatures were overwritten by the dark space entities. Within hours, half the galactic fleet was turned against itself as possessed officers took control of their ship's captain. Thrix found himself fighting his own crew aboard his flagship. The beings that had taken over his officers were intelligent and ruthless. They knew every weakness of the ship because they had access to the memories of the people they possessed. But they also made mistakes that revealed their alien nature. "Sir, the possessed crew members are showing signs of quantum distortion," his science officer reported while barricaded in the laboratory. Their energy signatures are fluctuating between multiple dimensional frequencies. The invasion was not just military, it was a complete subversion of galactic civilization. The dark space entities could possess anyone at any time, turning trusted allies into enemies without warning. Governments collapsed as leaders were taken over. Military units turned on each other as commanders fell under alien control. But then something unexpected happened. Weapons platforms that had been hidden throughout space suddenly decloaked and began engaging the shadow ships. These were not normal weapons but quantum disruption arrays that could affect targets existing in multiple dimensions. The platforms had been waiting for 18 months for this exact moment. Admiral, we are detecting massive energy signatures throughout the battle zone, the sensor officer announced. Unknown weapons systems are activating across 17 sectors. The hidden defenses that humanity had left behind were finally revealing their true purpose. Every abandoned human facility contained weapons designed specifically to fight interdimensional threats. Quantum field generators created barriers that prevented possession. Energy disruptors forced the shadow ships back into normal space, where they could be damaged. Commander Alex Stone's consciousness suddenly appeared on the bridge of Kethvar's flagship, the human quantum being materialized as a shimmering hologram that seemed to exist in several dimensions simultaneously. His voice carried the weight of someone who had fought battles beyond normal comprehension. Admiral, we apologize for the deception, but it was necessary, Stone's image said while data flowed across the tactical displays. The dark space entities have been planning this invasion for centuries. We had to let them believe the galaxy was defenseless while we prepared our true defenses. Commander Stone, we thought you were dead, Kethvar replied while watching the battle change dramatically around them. Death is a physical concept that no longer applies to us. We exist as quantum consciousness spanning multiple dimensions. This allows us to fight the dark space entities on their own level, while maintaining our connection to normal space through our automated systems. The revelation explained everything. The humans had not abandoned the galaxy, but had positioned themselves to fight a war that physical beings could not win. Their quantum existence allowed them to engage enemies that existed partially outside normal reality, while their technology protected the worlds they had left behind. The entities you see are just scouts, Stone continued. The real invasion force exists in dimensions you cannot perceive. We have been fighting them for 18 months to prevent them from bringing their full power into normal space. But the battle is reaching its climax and we need your help. The quantum human explained that the dark space entities fed on negative emotions generated by conflict and fear. The more chaos they created in normal space, the stronger they became in their home dimensions. This was why they had been manipulating galactic politics for centuries, creating wars and hatred that provided them with energy. Your species have grown stronger during our absence, Stone observed. You learned to solve problems without depending on us. This independence is exactly what we needed you to develop. The dark space entities expected to find a galaxy weakened by our departure, but instead they face worlds that have become more resilient. The battle raged across multiple dimensions as human quantum consciousness fought enemies that existed beyond physical perception. In normal space, the automated defense systems coordinated with galactic fleets to protect key strategic points. The shadow ships found themselves caught between physical attacks and quantum disruption. Dr. Zenathi's quantum research proved crucial, as her team developed new sensors that could detect interdimensional infiltration. For the first time, galactic forces could identify possessed individuals before they could cause damage. The technology was based on human research but required alien innovation to implement properly. The possession process creates quantum resonance patterns that we can detect, she reported to the Emergency Command Council. If we modify our medical scanners, we can identify infiltrators and potentially reverse the possession process. The tide of battle slowly began to turn as galactic forces adapted to fighting an interdimensional enemy. The humans had prepared them well with technology and tactics designed for exactly this situation, but the real victory came from something the dark space entities had not expected. The galaxy had learned to work together during humanity's absence. Species that had been rivals for centuries now coordinated their efforts perfectly. The threats they had faced without human mediation had forced them to develop new levels of cooperation and trust. The entities are retreating to their home dimensions, Stone announced as the shadow ships began to phase out of normal space. But this is only the first wave. There will be more invasions and we will need to remain vigilant. The human quantum consciousness explained that they would continue existing as interdimensional guardians, protecting the galaxy from threats that physical beings could not fight. Their sacrifice had been permanent, but it had also been successful in ways that no one could have predicted. "We never really left," Stone said as his image began to fade. "We just learned to exist where you could not see us so we could protect you from what you could not fight." 2 years after their transformation, humanity began to phase back into normal space, but they returned as something far beyond what they had been before. Colonel Sam Harris materialized aboard Admiral Kethvar's flagship, his form shifting between solid matter and pure energy as he existed simultaneously across multiple dimensions. "Admiral, the war in dark space is won, but victory came at a price we did not fully understand when we began this journey," Harris explained, while his quantum consciousness interfaced directly with the ship's computers. "We can no longer exist purely in normal space. We have become guardians between realities tasked with protecting all dimensions from threats that span multiple planes of existence." The returning humans were no longer individuals in any conventional sense. Their consciousness had merged into a collective quantum intelligence that could split itself across countless dimensions while maintaining perfect coordination. They retained their memories and personalities, but they had become something greater than the sum of their former selves. "We have learned much during our time in the quantum realms," Harris continued as data streams flowed directly into the ship's systems. "The dark space entities were just one faction in a vast multidimensional conflict that has been raging for millions of years. There are forces in the deeper dimensions that make the shadow ships look like harmless children." Admiral Kethvar listened with growing amazement as the human quantum being described. Battles fought in spaces that had no physical properties. Wars between energy patterns that existed as pure thought. Conflicts that determined the fundamental laws of reality across entire dimensional clusters. "Why are you telling us this?" Kethvar asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "Because the galaxy needs permanent guardians who can fight on multiple dimensional planes simultaneously. Physical species can defend normal space, but they cannot protect against threats that exist beyond matter and energy. We have taken on that responsibility, but we cannot do it alone." The human consciousness explained that other species would need to develop their own quantum awareness to detect and respond to interdimensional threats. The technology existed, but it required a level of cooperation and trust that the galaxy had never achieved before humanity's departure. "During our absence, you learned to work together in ways that had never been possible when we were mediating your disputes," Harris observed. "This unity is exactly what you will need to develop the defenses necessary for long-term survival. The dark space invasion was a test and you passed by growing stronger rather than weaker." Dr. Zanathi's research teams were already working on the new quantum detection systems with guidance from returning human consciousness. The technology was incredibly complex, but it built on principles that the galaxy had learned during 2 years of struggling without human assistance. "The quantum resonance chambers can be modified to create dimensional awareness in other species," she reported to the Scientific Council. "The process is not as extreme as what the humans underwent, but it will allow us to perceive threats that exist beyond normal space." The returning humans helped establish new protocols for galactic defense that incorporated both physical and quantum elements. Early warning systems that could detect dimensional incursions before they manifested in normal space. Weapons platforms that could engage enemies existing across multiple realities. Training programs that taught alien officers to fight wars that spanned dimensions. Captain Jake Collins appeared to Commander Thrix during a planning session at the new Interdimensional Defense Headquarters. The human quantum being looked exactly as he had before the transformation, but his presence carried the weight of someone who had experienced realities beyond normal comprehension. "Commander, your species showed remarkable adaptability during the crisis," Collins observed while tactical data flowed directly into Thrix's consciousness. The Corvan military tradition of honor and discipline translates well to interdimensional warfare. We would like to invite your people to join the Quantum Guardian program. Thrix was honored but also concerned about what such participation might require. Will we need to give up our physical existence like you did? No. The full transformation was necessary for us because we were the first to attempt interdimensional warfare. We have since developed techniques that allow other species to develop quantum awareness while retaining their physical forms. You would become bridges between normal space and the quantum realms rather than pure energy beings. The program expanded rapidly as species across the galaxy volunteered to develop quantum capabilities. The humans provided guidance and technology, but they insisted that each species find their own path to dimensional awareness. The diversity of approaches strengthened the overall defense network by creating multiple types of quantum consciousness. Ambassador Veltar found herself coordinating with human quantum beings who could appear simultaneously in dozens of locations across the galaxy. The efficiency was incredible but also somewhat unsettling as conversations could span multiple dimensions and time streams. We realize our current existence can be disturbing to physical beings, admitted Dr. Rachel Kim during a council session. But this transformation was necessary to protect all life from threats that exist beyond normal perception. We are still human in every way that matters. We still care about the same things and we still want to protect the people we love. The galaxy gradually adapted to having quantum guardians who existed partially in normal space and partially in dimensions beyond physical perception. Human consciousness appeared whenever interdimensional threats were detected. They provided guidance during crises and disappeared just as suddenly when their intervention was no longer needed. Katie Wells materialized in the laboratory of a young Menthari scientist who had just made a breakthrough in quantum physics. The human quantum being smiled with warmth that transcended her energy-based existence as she examined the alien's research. "This is excellent work, Dr. Yenara," Wells said while data flowed between their consciousness. "Your calculations show a deep understanding of dimensional mathematics. With a few modifications, this technology could detect quantum infiltration attempts weeks before they manifest in normal space." "Thank you, but I am still confused about something," the young scientist replied. "If you can exist across multiple dimensions, why do you still involve yourselves in normal space affairs?" Wells's expression became serious as she considered how to explain concepts that spanned realities. "Because normal space is where life begins. Physical existence is precious and irreplaceable. We gave up our bodies to protect yours, but we never stopped caring about the worlds we left behind." The human quantum consciousness revealed that their transformation had been more profound than anyone understood. They experienced existence across infinite dimensions simultaneously, but they chose to focus most of their attention on protecting the physical realm where other species lived and grew. "We see the birth of new stars and the formation of new life across countless realities," Wells continued. "But the dimension you call normal space holds a special place in our awareness, because it is where we began our own journey toward consciousness. As years passed, the galaxy developed new traditions and customs that acknowledged their quantum guardians. Monuments were built not to remember the dead, but to honor the transformed. Children learned about the humans who had sacrificed everything to become eternal protectors. The quantum humans ensured that their presence was felt, but not overwhelming. They appeared during crises and disappeared during peaceful times. They provided guidance when asked, but they never imposed their will on the physical species they protected. "We learned from our mistakes before the transformation," explained Commander Stone during a memorial service for the human species. "We realized that being too involved in your daily affairs prevented you from growing and becoming stronger. Our current existence allows us to protect you from threats you cannot handle, while leaving you free to develop your own solutions to problems you can solve." The galaxy had grown beyond its dependence on human mediation and problem-solving. The species that had once relied on human innovation now created their own technologies. The conflicts that had once required human intervention were now resolved through cooperation and diplomacy. But when threats emerged from dimensions beyond normal perception, the quantum guardians appeared instantly to defend all life from forces that would destroy reality itself. Humanity had found their true calling not as rulers or teachers, but as eternal protectors existing in the spaces between worlds. The silence that had once seemed like abandonment had become the quiet presence of angels watching from beyond the veil of normal existence, ensuring that all life could flourish under their invisible protection.